We all have heard that Channel 9 decided to pull the pin on regular appearances by the federal leader of One Nation, Pauline Hanson. Of course, desperately offended at everything that she had to say about lockdowns and some of the people in Housing Commission. But more importantly, the point that she was making, of course, about the multiple languages and the need to translate messages, of course, means that you're not getting key health information. That's, of course, what she was saying on television. But we know that this is the broader trend inside the media, right, which is to turn around and as you experience as a person running for office, if you're running for office and you're Zali Steggall, they'll have you on every show in the world. If you're Mark Latham and you're running for office in a New South Wales election, no, you're not allowed on at all.
That's right. Try getting on the ABC. But, what's happened to Pauline is indicative of what's going on. There's now a downgrading of democratic legitimacy. The fact that you've been elected by the people, you're an elected senator, to articulate an opinion. And for Nine to turn around and say, oh, no, we don't like that and she's banned because she was divisive. Did they watch A Current Affair for 40 years? Which is sort of ripping the country in half and picking up the biggest part for their commercial purpose. I mean, that side of it is laughable. It's a non-excuse, and it reminds me very much of the woke corporate executives who say, I won't advertise on a certain radio or TV platform. It's not because they're spooked by mad witches and other cat people, 20 people with multiple accounts on Twitter. That's just a pathetic alibi for the truth that these detached, woke corporate elites are throwing their own weight, are totally unelected, totally unaccountable, are throwing their own weight around to basically say, as media executives, we don't like that opinion, so that person's off.
Yep.
Or as corporate executives, we don't like that opinion, it doesn't wash at our dinner parties, and I'll be embarrassed. People will hop into me at the Eastern Suburbs dinner party. So we'll pull the advertising and force that person out. Now, this is one of the evil consequences, and I don't use that lightly, evil consequences of identity politics, where these corporate executives have been allowed to push this line and throw their weight around and ban this person and withdraw this advertising here. All the meanwhile, Labor and the Greens have been sucked into this in thinking that these identity activities are valid, while all these corporations are still ripping off the workers.
Absolutely.
The bank's 99.9% of their staff ripping off their customers, 0.1% working in a diversity and inclusion unit. So the left say, oh, that's great, they're doing something about race, gender and sexuality equality. This is what, old lefties used to call false consciousness. Labor and the Greens have been conned into this particular paradigm, and the corporate executives are laughing their heads off because no one's examining how they actually run their company, the workers and the customers they're ripping off, and they've got this false veneer of being nice people on race, gender and sexuality, and the main game is being missed completely. They are laughing at Labor and the Greens have been sucked into this, and there should be scrutiny on these people for what they're really up to. It's undemocratic, it's unaccountable, and it's a personal view that's been used in throwing their money around that's just plain wrong.
I couldn't agree more, Sing and Sister, because it's like, to me, Nicholas, again, the issue here is that I think if you're an elected member in an Australian Parliament, then you have a right to be interviewed, OK? You're a right to have a regular spot. But what happens with an idea you don't like is rather than ban the person, contest the idea. Confront the idea. Instead, part of sort of the glitter giggle of the past couple of days has been, she should never have been given a platform in the first place. And if we can limit the number of platforms these awful people are in, then somehow the voters will somehow forget what they actually think.
Look, I think Channel 9 made the right decision by taking Pauline Hanson off that program and giving her that platform. There's plenty of other people out there who hold worldviews similar to hers and frankly could put those views in a far more articulate and less divisive and offensive way than she does. Mark Latham on your program tonight is one of those people. But sadly, I think Pauline has got an appalling history here. I mean, remember, she was on Channel 7 there for a couple of years, but she got taken off because of some pretty appalling things she said at the time.
Channel 7, because David Koch accused her of being responsible for the mosque massacre in New Zealand.
Correct.
That's right. That's why she left.
Pretty offensive things she said about the massacre of which involved a white supremacist.
What did she say about the massacre?
Yeah, what did she say,
What did she say that was offensive about the massacre?
And then as for the comments she made this week, which were about people who I represent in Melbourne, they were divisive and offensive as well. I mean, to suggest that, be calling these people, drug addicts and immigrants and all these things, blaming them for the situation was very divisive language.
Why
and
are you
exactly
saying it
the
like
thing
this?
we don't need at this point, where you've got, frankly, a vulnerable community who are in severe lockdown, facing a minor humanitarian crisis, and all we get from our political leadership is to attack them.
No, but
I think Channel 9 was perfectly right to take her off. And Mark,
Rita,
I hope you're on there next week, prosecuting a similar worldview, but doing it in a more respectful and, frankly, far more intelligent and articulate way than Pauline does.
No, well, Nick, Pauline didn't get kicked off Channel 7 for everything she said about the massacre in New Zealand. It was a dispute where I thought, quite wrongly, she was being accused of being responsible.
He verbaled her.
For that. And Darren Hinch was part of the pile-on.
Yep.
And for that reason, she basically told him to jam it. No, I don't blame her for that for one moment.
Yep, this is it. I mean, but again, Rita, right, there are things that Green senators say that I just, like, they're sometimes laughable and sometimes they are just... like they go right into the low rent, right? But there's no part of me that says, they should not be allowed to be interviewed. Anyone who interviews them should be pushed off the air. I mean, that sort of madness that we are living right now, where again, and as Mark says about many of these corporates or these TV stations or radio stations, the suburbs are just places to sell things. Do your bit. Don't tell us what your opinion is. Don't let anyone reflect what your opinions are. We'll decide all of that 5 k's out from the city.
Well, they're not interested in that. They're not interested in the audience reach of a popular program.
Yeah.
They're interested in just throwing their advertising money around as a lever to try and influence the political debate to match their views. Now, someone at some point has got to do something about the anti-democratic nature of these corporate elites. And I don't know what that framework is, but we've got to hit them hard and think about new forms of regulation that pull these people into line. Maybe they should have to declare all this politically motivated advertising money shift that they have, because they're trying to influence the debate. You make a donation to the political system, you're supposed to declare it. Why shouldn't they declare the decisions they make and table the reasons why they are shifting advertising money around just to influence political views and political medium?
Good point. Rita, last word.
But that's what happens when you allow the left to hijack every institution, and that's what happens when Conservatives don't fight the culture wars and think they're above them. We've seen the left's march through public institutions, whether we're talking about universities or even primary schools and high schools, but now they've really captured the corporate side of the equation, and there is this corporate virtue signalling where people use their corporate dollars to advocate a particular position. You look at a program, say, like Tucker Carlson right now, absolutely killing it in the ratings. He is getting ratings that have never been seen in cable news before.
Agreed, they're amazing.
Outstripping every other program and station, and yet he has issues getting advertising. Why? Because there are concerted efforts. Every time a new advertiser comes on board, there is a concerted effort to harass that business. And
what happens here every day?
Well, they're happy to be harassed.
Here.
They're happy to be harassed. It's an alibi. These Twitter campaigns are an excuse. They're happy to move their advertising. They just, some people said something.
Some of it is Mark. I don't think all of it is that. I think sometimes they do genuinely get spooked, even if they should know that majority of these accounts are fake accounts, anonymous accounts. There's a small number of people operating them and they're not representative of the wider population.
Yeah, but
they get spooked when they get 1,000 emails saying the same things. And they're cowards. And most corporates are fairly cowardly.
But I'm just what you read. The orthodoxy is, and you said it, that the left have captured the corporate elites. I'm just wondering, is it the other way around? The corporate elites are using the left as useful idiots.
Yeah.
Who have distracted everyone onto this identity politics and PC. Meanwhile, they're still ripping off their workers, still ripping off their customers. They don't get anywhere near the scrutiny they used to get in the 80s and 90s. They're sailing their yachts on the weekend, still living in the big house and laughing their bloody heads off about the useful idiots on the left. Yeah. So I just wonder what the relationship really is.
And can I just say too,
and you look at Nike. you look at someone like Nike, sorry, Paul, but that is precisely what they're doing. Nike, as soon as they became massively woke and virtue signalled about social justice issues, the attention went away about what was happening in their sweatshops in third world countries. You know, that suddenly was no longer a consideration. Remember, Nike was a highly controversial company because of its workplace practices.
Look at Apple.
Now, Apple's another one. You know, using you look at the companies that are madly virtue signalling about Black Lives Matter and all sorts of other issues, yet they're in China using essentially forced labour to make their products cheaply.
Yep.
Absolutely unprincipled. And yet they get away with it because these idiots who pretend to hate capitalism buy their products because they think they're good corporate citizens.
But also, and look, you know this because you're watching it right now, but the reason this matters so much, the reason we talk about it so much is you know what the game is, right? Which is eventually to slide us all off the telly, off the radio, off the newspapers, off the internet, ban the blog, ban the YouTube channel, all of that stuff. And that's why we need to fight. That's why you need to support the people who support us. It's why you need to tell your mates to get a subscription, watch more of it, make us more powerful, because there's nothing that sends these nutters, even crazier than an even stronger joint.
We're the last bastion and we're so fair-minded we let Nick on.
Nicholas, is there anything you want to say about that before we finish up here?
I mean, look, that was a really fascinating and deep discussion you were all just having there. I don't agree with any of it, of course, but it was very
interesting. I think there's
probably an academic paper and all that. You guys were getting really, really deep with your theoretical thinking. I don't know how we got from Pauline Hanson to all of that, but look, my opinion hasn't changed about Pauline. You know, it's xenophobia light is what she peddles. It's divisive and damaging to Australia, and Channel 9 did the right thing taking her off.